I know you had your hesitancy for whatever reason. You're going to tell us that. You are going to tell us that. So, and of course, I mean, you have to, after telling us about yourself, you have to give me that 2 minutes, like, to go through what I do and where to find information. So please tell us about yourself and let's go.
Okay, well, thank you, Vikram. I just realized since we're talking about neutrality, maybe I should change my virtual background because I'm not being neutral, right? I'm promoting my university in the background, so I'm going to, so that's part of it, right? How do we advertise ourselves? Are we truly neutral, or are we selling something always in the background? Or so I've changed it, so now I'm neutral. But yeah, thank you. A little bit about my background, just a quick, elevator pitch. I grew up in Panama in a beautiful tropical time. Then it was the American Canal Zone, almost 100 years of history. And I grew up in this kind of beautiful social utopia, and, left and studied foreign policy in my first job and worked, many years in that. And that's where my love for conflict resolution really started, to do more conflict resolution in international relations, like stopping conflicts over water, wars, so that was kind of my initial love of conflict resolution. And then became a mother, went to Germany and Berlin, and realized I needed a career that was a little more mommy friendly, and became an English teacher and coach, and teaching all ages, and in the Eastern Berlin area. And so I started to learn about the power of communication, and cultural training, and our cultural differences. And so I became very passionate about how are we communicating. It's not the language we speak, but it's all the other things, right? The nonverbals, those how do we come across? And so, and how to have better business relations, right? People are working and they want to have good relations to their clients, to their colleagues. So, that kind of fascinated me to dig more. And then I became a systemic coach, and life coach, and then was doing that for a while, working with expats in Berlin to help them in their career, to get back on track. And, when you lose your job or go into a new culture and start over, it's very traumatizing. It's very difficult. So to walk people through very difficult life changes was what I was working on. And then my idea of, okay, I really want to study conflict resolution to teach and train. Then I started 5 years ago this program at Nova Southeastern, to study conflict resolution. And through that program, I discovered I loved everything, right? I did mediation classes, facilitation, conflict coaching, conflict intervention in organizations, and then the Ombuds role, the emerging role of conflict resolution officers. So I just got really excited, like what's going on here in the United States in this field, and then specialized in organizational conflicts. And, that's leadership training to emotional intelligence, diversity, inclusion. So there's so many interrelated topics with, the field of conflict resolution. So I know today we're talking about neutrality and mediation. So I'll try my best to kind of give my insights. And as my final intro, I am working on my PhD now, looking at the whole evolution of our field of conflict resolution, and how people, have careers in this, and then how people then eventually open their own practice or business and become entrepreneurs like yourself, Vikram. You are a social entrepreneur spreading your word worldwide. And how are we going to really brand our field to make a positive difference? So people, when they have a conflict, they're like, ooh, let's call the conflict resolution expert, right? Let's go get that coaching, mentoring. Let's not sue each other and destroy each other when we're having conflicts. Let's really find a better way. And I think that installing that type of ethic and moral, that we try to peacefully resolve conflicts, and it only as a last resort do we have to maybe go to courts because that's the only, inevitability. But, we have cultures that it's a sue culture. I want to be right. I want to win. And I just fundamentally have a problem with that philosophy and thinking because it's destructive. And, we teach that, to children at a young age, and we're probably still teaching that to be, successful. You got to compete, you got to outbeat everybody, particularly in an American culture. And, long-term, is this really a good thing? So I'm very passionate about our environment as well. I studied environmental planning, so I'm quite concerned about the state of our world and where we're going and destroying our environment. So, there's a lot of work to be done in that field as well. So that's kind of a nutshell of my life evolution so far. I think, as you do get older, I think I hit 51, I'll say it on, and I think there's a powerful quote by, your first 50 years, you're really building up a healthy ego. And then your next 50 years, you're tearing that ego down. And so it's really, when you meet people, it's like, what is your life purpose? What mission, what legacy do you want to leave? And I think it's like reprogram all those things you learn, relearning. And so that's kind of a little bit of my what the groundwork I wanted to lay, the perspective with my insights. And so I'm happy to be here today.
Well, that's really interesting. That's a lot of things, and I'm sure all that will come out in this session, all these experiences and everything. But like I always do, of course, Mandy's there. Mandy, you can say hi to Eileen, but you are going to play a mute spectator role. That's what's going to happen.
Hi, Mandy.
That's the joke. And let's just put up the basic thing. I need to do this because I keep saying that there is someone who said that I start very abruptly. So I need to put out basic information, nothing much. It takes that 1 minute, and it's going to be a repetition. Now that's the only thing I think I should just record a video and just play it every time. So it's like the same things go out, but let's see. So this is basically what we're doing. This is neutrality and mediation, and we've had the keynote address already by Bernie, and Ken is going to give the closing address. Thought process, I mean, this statement of Desmond Tutu definitely being the background, this also can be discussed, and we can look at various aspects in it, because Mandy also had something to say about, do you know who the elephant is and who the mouse is? So if you're neutral in situations of injustice, you have chosen the side of the oppressor. If an elephant has its foot on the tail of a mouse and you say that you're neutral, the mouse will not appreciate your neutrality. So that's kind of the background, and a little bit on mediatorvikram.com. You can find information, because like I keep saying, 450 videos, more than that, to really check what's happening. And I mean, shows in, okay, let's just go through the thing basics. Of course, social media connections are all there. Send a message if you want. And World Mediation Circle is what is the focus area, to create mediation circles in every community, every school. And when you said, Eileen, about climate change and being concerned about that, there's a climate change mediation circle. The fact being that the reasonable people with the mediator mindset, when they are part of discussions can be different. And Ken also had written about the role of mediators in global problem solving, including climate change. So there is a role there, and we have to put that out. And of course, be a patron. That's what I'm putting out there, because at some point of time, I think support and funding is required. So I put it down very basic. I said you could just be a patron for $9 a month. And beyond that, yes, you can pledge whatever you want. And then we have the shows and events, which will keep, of course, keep getting updated, so you can check what's happening. And other things about with Ken's, all those sessions. I keep saying that, look, what Ken, the time he's given, there are about, I think now, about 16 sessions with him of various events and shows. So I mean, just the fact that he's given so much time and the free resources available, I just say please value it. I mean, I was telling Ken that we have to start this gifting culture. People should send him a gift if they've in some way been inspired by what he said, his words of wisdom. Send him a gift. So that's the kind of culture we have to develop. So that's about it, I think, Eileen. And of course, okay, I won't get into all that. Mediation, so people can read about it. So, Eileen, it's you, the topic, and that's it. Mandy is definitely mute spectator. I am not going on mute. I'm there, but I'm I'm a spectator. So please, Eileen.
Yeah, well, today has kind of been a spontaneous. I know probably a lot of other speakers, have a PowerPoint or they're ready to roll or citing research. So today I just decided to join you and just to kind of off the cuff, so you can ask me questions. It'll be kind of like a talk show if you prefer, to kind of generate creative ideas. Sometimes that's when you're prepared, you don't allow for that creative energy to come to the, but I was thinking about, as a conflict coach, and as a coach, neutrality. When you're taught to be a coach, that's basically the foundation as well. You're not there to consult, you're not there to be a therapist, you're not there to give solutions. Your job is to listen and to help your client understand what they're really saying. So you're using techniques like appreciative inquiry, right? Like looking into the future. Where are you now? And you're trying to create that type of motivation to help people get beyond any type of blockages that they might have. And so you're using these types of active listening, open-ended discussions. So all these techniques that we use in mediation apply also to conflict coaching and coaching. Because your client sometimes just needs to be heard. They need that safe space to talk with somebody that maybe, so things like injustice where they've never been heard, to be able to go to somebody and that you're unbiased. I mean, I'm not here to tell you right or wrong. I'm here to give you space. Of course, a workplace mediation, if you're hired to come into an organization where there's two parties that are having a conflict, you're trying to come in, hopefully as an external person to aid that process to find a resolution, however that is. So, in mediation, there's all these different techniques, right? So if you're a problem solver, you have the problem solving mediation style. And then that's where you guide your clients to get them from their locked positions and find interest and then find a resolution. And that seems to work well in commercial disputes or in, more of kind of the workplace. I don't really care about this person. I don't need to, maybe you don't have to work with them anymore. So you're just a little more, you're not so concerned about your relationship to that person. So that problem solving mediation might work well, right? And all those techniques that go with that. And then of course, we have narrative mediation, which comes out of the therapy background, right? So, marriage, counseling, youth violence. So narrative mediators who really are focusing on not so much what's happened in the past, but what's the future story? Okay, where are we going with all of this? And trying to have the two parties understand that they're not to blame each of them. It's circumstances, or that because of life and what happened, things got derailed. So how can we, come up with a positive resolution for the future? And narrative mediation seems to work well with that, because let's script a story together. That's the best solution for all of us. And that works well, in those types of mediations where you have a relationship with a person. If it's, you're divorcing, or, it's a family member over a family inheritance, right? Like this whole area of elder mediation, who's going to take care for a sick person, like having those types of discussions, future scenario and planning, those are really powerful to get out concerns. And so, that's a lovely opportunity as well to try to practice that neutrality. And then of course, there's these transformative mediations where with international conflicts, where, you're going into places where maybe there's genocide, where communities need healing, and you got to come in as a neutral. Now that's extremely difficult, because in areas where there's been a mass violation or extreme violence, how are you supposed to be neutral, right? That's, I think, very difficult because, of course, you're going to be biased. If someone is, murdered, raped, people in the village, I mean, it's going to be hard for me to be siding with the rapist, right? Because, you've committed a crime and there's a punishment for that, right? And so that's where, arbitration and courts possibly really, and there is no neutrality, right? That's just impossible. You might try to give a fair trial to someone. So I think when you're trying to do those types of mediations, you really need to be very good at what you do because, some of these areas may not have the money to incarcerate people, or so how do you heal places? So if someone was a prisoner, I did in one of my classes, like studying how prisoners, they commit these crimes and then the victims and their families try to forgive, these prisoners, right, for those crimes they've done. And mediation can be very helpful because you're trying to allow for this kind of healing process. And that's very powerful. People do things in life that they regret, and sometimes they have to live with that. And so, I think those areas of neutrality and partiality are hard because, in our cultures, we want to see those people punished. And so how do you give them some fairness, as they're, going through their life? They're also human beings. They've also, can they be healed and forgiven and reintegrated back in society? And so there's a lot of studies about in Africa where, these people have to go back in their society and how do they take them back? And so like elder mediation. So all of these old cultural ways that these cultures have learned to listen to the wisdom of their elders, is very powerful. We think mediation is some new concept, but, civilizations have been doing this for a long time. And so, looking at how different cultures mediate, and so maybe an elder, he's not neutral, right? He's the village elder. He knows best. He knows these families. You two are going to work it out. And so they're like a referee, possibly, but that works. And somehow, I think what's critical is having those people that are doing this work, that are facilitating and that are getting active. And when that's not there, it just becomes a legal procedure. I always think that doesn't lead to optimal results. So that's the real discussion on our field of mediation. Are we mediating to really put a Band-Aid on a real problem? Our deep-seated problems, or are we there to really come up with the best solution? And that takes time. It can't happen in 5 sessions, right? And I think many times when we have conflicts, we want a quick fix. And we might aid that, but truly, did that resolve the situation? And so is resolution really done? And I think that's the biggest challenge, for us as mediators. We might come in, or coaches, you only have a couple sessions to work your magic and hope that leads to a better result. But what after, right? What after, you go in as a workplace mediator, maybe it resolved that, but then, a year later, they're back in the same boat once again, right? And so, people repeat patterns, right? We really learn, right? Until, or is it, we have to keep relearning and repeating the same things over and over until we finally get it. And I think that happens particularly, when you see in workplace violence, bullies, they just get away with it. They get promoted, they become directors. I just read a study on toxic stars, like how organizations reward people by performance. Those that are, they're brilliant, they're creative, they're maybe have turnover and they know how to get the job done, but they don't know how to relate to people, and they destroy the whole office environment. People resign. So you have this massive resignation of people going on around the world, leaving jobs in droves because of, unhealthy, toxic work environments. So, so if you're a boss and you keep promoting someone, is they're not being impartial, right? They're not being neutral. They're just promoting, or shoving the problem into another place. So we all know this, right? In organizations, there was problem, people just get pushed around and shoved into, and they work their way up a corporate ladder or in an organization, and they're not competent to really work in teams or, be that leadership. So why are we rewarding this in our cultures, this type of personalities? So that's kind of a long-winded introduction into kind of mediation and neutrality, where I see it's really difficult. I listened to Bernie's speech, and I think we do damage our reputation as mediators to say we're completely neutral, or I think that's a false notion. So, if we come out and say, look, so if I was to mediate a topic and it happened to be a divorce, and I have a real problem, let's say with the man that's in the relationship, it could be that I'm very biased to that. And so I have to say that up front, or I have to recognize my own biases. Or if I get into a situation, then maybe I need to step down as the mediator or the coach to say, you know what, I've taken it for the first step, but I realize it's not going anywhere with me because I am biased. But how many times do we coach people because we need the money, and we're like, whatever, I don't care. I've got to do this, in our field, take on this case because I got to pay my bills too, right? So, my neutrality, I'll just have to swallow it. Or maybe I don't really believe in the concept and I'm going against my own ethics and values. So, of course, in coaching and our work, we have ethics and values that we need to adhere to when we're doing these things. But there could be cases where you're not, and you need to voice that because you might derail the whole process and not be the right person for this, this situation. And so I think we have to recognize our capabilities. And we've talked about this in what I've heard, these unconscious biases, really this blind spot, and a lot of leadership, they call it the Johari window, where, you may not be aware of your own blind spot. People around you are, right? So that's why they do this 360-degree coaching, where your colleagues rate how you're doing, because you're totally, have these biases. And so I think there's a lot of tools out there that can help us recognize if we're neutral, right? So there's this Harvard implicit bias test. You can take all these diagnostic tools to discover in your own side, where are my areas I have to work on? And so, for many of us in conflict resolution, we need to do those things ourselves too, constantly, to reflect on, am I really, maybe I learned mediation 15 years ago, but, am I evolving as well? Are my skills up to the standard that need to happen? And I think a lot of really good practitioners in our field do a lot of reflective practice. And I wanted to say that that's probably very important in neutrality, to really, keep a journal or a log in your work. And, maybe in certain cases it came up, I wasn't very neutral, or this, this is a problem area, and really reflect on how could I have done that better, or what has been the learning lesson for me, and how can I bring that into my, doing things better in the future. And so I think important for this neutrality field is learn from it, learn from other case studies. And I genuinely believe if we're our authentic selves and doing the best we can, I think most of the time, sometimes we beat ourselves up because, something happened, it's out of our control. We tried the best we could with what we knew at that time. And I think that's what most people also, I always believe that most of the time people come to the situation as best they can. And it's our job to help them to get better. So teaching and training and providing information, I think is important. I think, in organizational conflicts, really giving that literature and the theory to back up what we're saying is really important too. Okay. Usually I'm not a theoretical person. I'm really a pracademic. I like to just practice what I preach, right? Rather than study and theorize and overanalyze. But I think it's important in our field when we're trying to, to really refer to cutting edge research, what's really out there, and bring that into our practice, right? And so, like, beyond neutrality, we talked about that. What are those key insights from that I can take from that and build into my own practice? Or, so yeah, I think, I have, I love, we have Mandy here from Greece. I love Athena. She's the Greek, she's my heroine. I love her. And she's the goddess of war, but the goddess of wisdom. And I think that the ancients, they got this, they understood these concepts. So this has been around for a long time. So, can we be diplomats? Can we have that early intervention? When I worked in foreign policy, that's it. We want diplomatic intervention early on, so we don't have to drop a bomb on people, right? That's the last resort. Okay. And so another thing that gets me overexcited and puzzling is, why do we have departments of defense and no departments of peace around our world? Why is there not, putting money into that? Of course, in the US, it's the State Department. But what if we were to drop mediators out of airplanes into a cultural place in a parachute, and they drop to the ground, that they're there to help, right? And so I really question that we put so much money into defense and destruction still, that it's mind-boggling. Okay. I also, when I studied foreign policy, after leaving my tropical paradise of Panama and started learning about nuclear weapons, and like, we actually built this stuff, like how, and put this stuff in the ground so it can contaminate the water for the next thousands of years. Like, who in their right mind is coming up with these? And then I started to become very angry, as I started learning about our world and what are we doing, to destroy each other, And so I think that's where this kind of passion for conflict resolution comes in on all fronts, right? From international diplomacy to workplace conflicts to interpersonal conflicts with our family members, and how difficult it is for us as conflict resolution practitioners to be, engaged in conflicts and to be peaceful. I also don't like to deal with conflicts, but I'm like practicing and preaching this, right? So when we're actually in these conflicts that affect us personally, how difficult it is, right? And so we've learned, maybe I have to communicate better, or I have to look at things through a different lens, or I need to take off my glasses and put on another pair of glasses to understand this in a different way. And, I can't always assume. I've got to look from the other side, and that's what it is in mediation. I got to understand the other side so I can understand why we're in this conflict. So this, we talked about the power of reframing. And I think that's really important in these intractable conflicts where you see no resolution. And that's really about seeing the other side, and trying to create understandings of our perceptions. And I think that's also it. Sometimes we have false perceptions, and where is this coming from? Why are we thinking like this? And so, I think a good mediator then is helping the end client come to these realizations, just like a coach, like through this questioning, through that you're helping them have those aha moments, that they stop and then finally get it, or they have to argue and fight and then they finally put down, their boxing gloves. So I think it's like we're mediators are like we're getting in the boxing ring too, and you might get in the middle and you might get punched out, right? But you're in the boxing ring, and that courage to get into the boxing ring is what's important. You can stand on the sidelines and watch them do it out until one is knocked out, or you get in there. And I think we don't talk enough about that in our field, our vulnerability and courage to try to assist in the process. And so through that, I think it's really, to be completely impartial and neutral is not possible, right? So I think that's just a theory, and theories are always disproven. And I think that's what we've been talking about in this whole symposium. So yeah, those are kind of some thoughts. I don't know if you wanted to pipe in, Vikram, or we can have a little.
No, I think with the things that you said, given that broader picture there, because the one thing that's come out from the symposium and it's being used is safe space. I've heard that by everyone. That's a safe space concept, and you create that safe space and what needs to go into it. I think you just take it from how it happens. You're not thinking about it, but you are creating it, and whether neutrality actually does play a role or not, where it fits in, because trust is another word which has come out, and when there's trust, then all these other elements, do they really play a role? So I mean, and you spoke about in terms of history and how things. I mean, mediation, nothing new. It's been happening, and that part of it, of course, I've had that one symposium on mediation in our culture and traditions, then one on indigenous peoples and mediation. So I think with the word wisdom that you used, I think that is something which is not valued anymore. I mean, I'm just saying maybe that's where we've gone wrong. I think that's one aspect of life which was a very essential aspect, that someone with wisdom is available to you. And today that's maybe priorities have changed, the way we gauge people have changed. So I think that's something which I think maybe we need to relook. And the idea of this world mediation circle is this: we bring out these people. You said drop mediators into the space. I'm saying the ones that are there, let's just bring them out. So at every place, wherever conflict areas, of course, I look at dispute resolution. Conflict resolution is, of course, much larger field for all of you to do. I'm in that limited space, but wherever disputes are, there are enough people out there which can be brought out, and they can actually help in resolving that. So I mean, a lot of other things but I like that pracademic. Pracademic is an interesting term. I haven't heard that term before, but it sounds good.
Yeah, it's practitioner plus an academic, right?
I was looking at it as a practical academic and not as a practitioner academic, the practical academic, because sometimes what happens is academics goes into a little too much into theory sometimes.
Right.
And the practical academic, like in the philosophy and mediation, we were talking about the mediator being a practical philosopher or philosopher in practice, and mediation being philosophy in practice. So the practical part of it sometimes gets missed out. And then, of course, ministry of peace. I think we need those ministries of peace for sure. So lots of things you brought out. I think it's interesting. But the important thing right now, I think one thing that we need to discuss, which we have been discussing, but what your thoughts on whether we should actually discuss neutrality at all? Because with Greg's session today, we had a very nice. If you have a look at that, because for him, like he said, the mediator is mediation, and it's the individual, and beyond that, you've gone to the individual. So it's someone coming to Eileen. There's not anything beyond that is not required. So so that trust part of it, or whatever, however you identified the person. So should these discussions actually happen at all? And so I don't know, your thoughts.
Well, I know I was just helping a professor teach mediation to graduate students and all these different models. And of course, there's another model here called the evaluative model. And that's a model that's used a lot by lawyers. So now lawyers are kind of saying, all right, I'm going to hang up my shingle. I'm also a mediator. So, so they're bringing really their legal expertise into a mediation, and I don't think they're really neutral, right? But that's okay. That's their expertise that they're bringing, and so they're really trying to coming up with, okay, let's have a resolution. Let's have an agreement at the end of this mediation session. Let's get this going. So they're like really problem solving, and they're really trying to, do it in a way that doesn't waste people time, tries to create the best solution. So, and we were teaching these students, like, how do you do an opening statement? And in the opening statement, you're supposed to, I'm neutral, and, all your metaphors on how you're going to work. And particularly for new mediation, people entering the field who are not very comfortable yet, they're just trying to learn the practice in the field, to put that stamp on them, like you said, right in the beginning, I'm neutral and I'm here just to, maybe that stunts their, being able to do a good job in the mediation, because it, puts on those brakes for them to pull back, and not really become that kind of referee between the two parties. And, like, hold on, let this other person, let them speak, let them have the opportunity. And you're refereeing really, and giving that ability so each person is heard. So if I was neutral, like in transformative mediation, I just kind of sit back and let things unfold as they are supposed to, and let it go wild, and then come in and put those boundaries around it. So I think the bottom line is each person has to figure out what works for them, what style, and how they introduce neutrality and impartiality is really up to them. If they come in and say, I'm a mediator for women in divorce cases, I've mediated 500 cases. Majority of women have won. The other person on the other side might feel intimidated by that. Like, okay, well, you're not neutral at all. Okay. And you might have to say that. Yeah, that's true. But I'm here, but I've had cases where the other party has won. Okay. So no, I do practice impartiality, but often, the data shows you're not impartial. Right. So I don't know, if that's works for a person, or it helps them to get more clients to say, I'm not neutral, and then they're like, I'm going to book that person because they're going to help me get, resolve this conflict. So I think it does dampen to say, look, I'm just here to guide the process, and whatever happens and who wins, that may not be comforting to a person who is the mouse, like you said. Like, I'll listen to the elephant, but, the elephant can win as well. People like to have certainty. And, if they go into a situation and it brings more uncertainty and more conflict, then often they'll just go to the courts because they just want to have a resolution and they don't want to go through that process. So now that it's mandated, like you said, particularly in courts like divorce, you must go to mediation. It's like coaching. Some people are uncoachable. I hate to say that. And I mean, I could say, oh, I'm neutral, you could coach, but some people are just uncoachable because they don't want to be there. They don't want to be coached. They're not ready for it. So, if you have to mediate those types of cases where you have players who don't want to be there, and it's like pulling their teeth to get them in a room, that's going to take a lot of work. So, with that said, I think there's a lot of, hindrance to being really impartial. So that's kind of some more thoughts on that.
Well, I'll tell you, the only thing that I want to point out, in the World Mediators Conference, we had a session on terminology and mediation, and Jeannie, she does work in community mediation, and she said, we moved away from parties. We don't use parties, and we say participants, and we don't say opening statement. We say orientation. I'm just putting it across to you because this
Yeah.
is now that is the terminology we use here.
Okay.
So
That's
because again,
great.
it's come from the look. All these terms have come from the court system, and we want to make sure that there is no such connection. It's a totally different process. So that's
Mhm.
terminology which is going to be there. But in terms of, I'm telling you, when we talk about it, should it be as simple as saying this is a process where you trust me, and if you trust me, we continue with it, and beyond that nothing else is required, and that's can it be as simple as that? And all these aspects, are we confusing the user by even using that word? Because the mediation world itself is not clear about that word. And if you go out and say, oh, I'm neutral, they would understand. Do they really understand it? So are we confusing the user? And again, with the models that you're talking about, do we really want to confuse the user to be able to understand? Because being a dynamic process, should you really be creating these boundaries, or even when is it narrative and when is it transformative and when is it evaluative and when is it facilitative? It has to flow the way it has to flow. So I don't know whether I think I don't know whether has it affected the popularity of mediation by the user being confused by what is really happening here. Whom am I supposed to go to? Whom am I supposed to find? Am I supposed to find a narrative mediator? Does that suit me? I think maybe we've done too much. We've created too many terms out there. Can it be as simple as what Greg said today, that I'm just going to Greg? That's it. And beyond that, nothing. So that trust, whatever way it comes, through word of mouth it comes, or whatever reason. And in communities, definitely the fact that over time people have seen someone's conduct and they can relate to that person, and they will go to the person they can relate to. And that's the way it has to be, because you have to be comfortable in that. That's why it's a safe space, because you have to be comfortable in it. So I mean, are we creating too many terms out there? Are we really confusing the user? I don't know how you look at it.
Mhm. Well, I think what's interesting too, also, like you said, in this online dispute resolution field, ODR, where they're saying there's a lot of opportunity now, before a Zoom session or before you're doing a dispute resolution online parties, that there's a lot of preparation work, right? This is how we're going to open up. So you're walking them through the whole technology and background on how this is going to happen. And oftentimes that's also an opportunity to connect with the other party and to build that trust, like you were saying, to kind of grease the skids, if you want to say, or lay the groundwork. That seems to be kind of a positive attribute that they're saying in ODR now, and dispute resolutions, or doing mediations online. That's really helped. And then also there's that safe space. I'm not in the same room with the person, right? So I can turn my camera off. So there's a lot of, these pros and cons of ODR, but maybe that helps also with impartiality or neutrality, because we're all on the screen. You know what I mean? It's a little bit, in technology, we become a little bit more not as natural as we are, let's say, in person. So maybe that creates an element of neutrality or impartiality, because it's technology. That's what they call the fourth party in, disputes. It's the technology aspect. And so maybe that helps to create that funnel of a little bit more of a impartial arena, so that's kind of an interesting angle to look at as well. But yeah, I agree. I think it's, it's who you go to, right? And, obviously you need to build up your reputation. You have to do cases. We talked a little bit before we went online about ombuds offices, right? The emerging role of ombudsmen, and now it's called ombuds in the terminology. And I really am fascinated in that field, because that's now starting to go into big corporations and into medical institutions, and obviously educational institutes. They have an ombuds office where they're trying to help, workers, colleagues peacefully resolve conflicts, that they don't have to bring in the lawyer or labor dispute expert. So I don't know. And of course, they also on the websites, they were impartial to the parties, we're neutral. That's our role. We're neutral. And so some organizations don't like that terminology. That's why they're against an ombuds. Okay. Because they don't want a neutral party in there, like holding them accountable. So, so that's also very interesting.
But what they use is what they say is independent, informal, and confidential, and what was it? Independent, informal, confidential, and some. What is the fourth one they say? They have those. But what I've done is I've had these discussions on the ombuds, because what I've tried, yeah, what I've been trying to do is, if you go to the website, under the shows and events, you'll find all these various things that I've done in relation to the ombuds. Why I've been doing this is that the way the ombuds, the whole their role as such, it's a little. At the one session that we did was on ombuds, a Swiss Army knife. So I mean, are they really putting out there that there is so much they do, and does that again confuse the stakeholders? Because it's been 50 years in the US, it's still not popular. People are still talking about it. There is Daniela, she's in Georgetown University. She's just creating that office there. They went out. The students had no idea when they asked them what ombuds is. I mean, I'm saying over these years, what is the reason for that? So I was trying to break it up. I said, look, what is really happening here? So of course, conflict coaching came up as one important role that the ombuds plays. And what I'm trying to do is, I'm saying, is there a concept? Do we need to divide this? Because terminology really doesn't matter. Is it what the user? What does the user want? So does the user want a mediator, organizational mediator, and an organizational conflict coach? And should they be the same thing? And if they can, both of them can do the same thing, or the same person can do both of them. But are we going to be? Does it come out clearly to the user? So I just felt that I'm trying to create. Look, for me, I have to look at ways that mediators can find work. Finally, it's down to that. So there is a major role that mediators can play in organizations as mediators. The other aspect of it, conflict coaching and all, definitely someone can do that, and whoever has to do it, and not an issue at all. But can we just say organizational mediator? Can we just leave it at that? Why do we need to add so many things to it? And is that really confusing it? That's why that area hasn't developed, although I feel it's a very important thing to have. But in the current way it's put across, is it too wide? Are you expecting too much from that individual? Because so that's the reason for those discussions. So, and it's going to we're going to carry that forward. Yeah.
Well, I think that's important, right? What's your unique selling proposition, right? Where is your niche? So to say, oh, I'm a lawyer, I'm an ombuds, I'm a mediator, I'm a conflict resolution practitioner, I'm all of the above, right? You might have those skills, right? But to call yourself, that's my profession, and that's, we're like, I think what you're saying is like blurry, right? We're going across different areas and mixing, and so that might, hurt the brand, or the branding. What we're, I think, was it Pablo Picasso wrote a book on branding that he always stuck to his Picasso paintings, and then eventually he started learning the power of branding through creating, other products. But if you dilute your main product, then you might hurt your entire business. So I think that's kind of what you're saying. If we dilute the field of conflict resolution, it might hurt us more in the long term.
I think I'm saying it's hurting it totally, because does the user really know what's really happening here? Because in the mediation world, you can talk about various things and all the theories and everything, but finally, aren't we going for the user? Doesn't the user need the experience that the user should get? But to put all these words there, and to really for them not to understand as to what are they really getting into, and what is this person bringing to the table that I need. I think that we need to maybe understand what you really want to put across, and put it across in a very simple manner to the user. And the theory part of it, all the discussions in the mediation world can continue. That should happen. But to the user, let's not put all these. Like, I mean, a word like neutrality is something, like I said, we are having so many discussions and so many things are coming out of it. Well, where is the user? I mean, just people do say, okay, I'm neutral. And they say it in their, you call it opening statement, and I'm saying orientation, that terminology,
Mhm.
let's use that. But they say that, what is the person going to understand really? I mean, do they understand what's happening? Or do they want to understand? So why finally, maybe not, we're not promoting mediation, and mediators may be in the right way. Finally, it's the individual. You're coming to the individual. Individual comes as a package with what various things, but do you trust the individual? And stay in the process up till you trust the individual and the process. That's it. And that's the flexibility of the process. That's the way that it is all structured. You're not forced into it. You can walk out, and that should be clear. You can walk out whenever you want, whenever you think the trust isn't there, walk out of it. You're better off that way. I mean, I have situations where I don't even take up the matter. If I have this feeling that someone else has recommended me as a mediator, and the other person thinks, why has this person done it? Why is this? I said, don't even think about it. Don't go through this process with me. If you don't trust the individual, you won't trust the process, and it won't go anywhere. It's not right. It won't be the right thing to do. So these are things that come up, and you have to be clear about these things. Fine, without trust, everything else, you don't have to be neutral. You don't have to be unbiased. You don't have to be impartial. You just have to have the trust. That's it. That's the way I look at it. I mean,
I tend to agree. And I think, that's an area I'm researching on, how do you successfully market your conflict resolution practice, right? If you're, a solopreneur and you're doing this on your own in your own private practice, those are all the things that go on your website, right? Those are all the things that go in your flyers, that terminology, like you're just saying. So it's not only in that maybe first encounter with the client, you're marketing that too. And I think also interesting, I was listening to a debate on how the different generations, right? I'm a Gen X, right? And then you got the boomers, and then now you've got the millennials and the Gen Zs. Like, how do they look at, and if they're typing in, looking for a conflict resolution mediator, what words are they putting in? What are those terms that are going into the Google engine? And it's rarely mediator. It's not ombuds. It's not any of these things that you're saying. Like, they're searching, and those are those things that you want to say, look, this is what I can do for you. This is the service. And so are we really tapping into that? So when we get, like you said, more business for our own, and we're tapping into, I think the next generation, they're trying to do it informally. That's why people are now like, oh, let's use AI and conflict resolution software. So you don't even have to use a mediator. We'll just resolve it. You type in, and then you've got something aiding you, and that might work. It's super informal. You got a computer doing it for you. AI who's just asking questions, they're collecting data. And, so this whole field of dispute resolution is changing, and a lot of people don't want to sit in a room, and they're seeing, communication behaviors are like, I don't want to communicate to this person anymore. I just, so they're trying to use technology to solve it. So how do you deal with that? Okay. So now you've got people that don't even want to communicate, they just want to do it very passively. And so, those are the challenges. And, I think, like you said, I mean, who are we going to be? Who are the future conflict resolution practitioners of the future? I mean, I'm, maybe got another good 20 years to go.
maybe more. Maybe
I'll be on your talk show in 20 years from now.
Evolution of a mediator, yes.
We'll be talking about this still, but yeah, who's our audience, right? Is it a younger generation? And I often see that they don't like this antagonistic way, you against me. They like this facilitative, like we're all in it together, we're a group. So, learning those types of techniques I don't know. I just think that we definitely, like you said, this is about impartiality and neutrality. I don't think the next generation is thinking in neutral terms, to be quite frank. Definitely not. I have 3 children. We were talking in the earlier one about children, and I'm not so sure that this next generation coming down the pipeline and going into workplace settings, if they're really prepared to resolve conflicts. So a lot of work to do, as you can see.
And in a certain direction which maybe has not been looked at, maybe we have to change the direction. And Mandy has noted so many things that she has to ask you and talk to you about. Yes,
Okay.
Mandy, please, all those things that you have noted, now it's your chance to take her through that. Yes.
Yes, that's why I was looking forward. I was hearing it was so interesting what you talked about, Eileen, and your dialogue with Vikram was so inspiring. But I really was thinking that, okay, it would be great if somebody comes and we say to him, okay, you trust me, let's go together. It's like a love story. Love me and I will take you to heaven. Okay, it would be very nice, but it is, I believe, to talk about it and finding a way to have our dream in John Lennon's and Yoko Ono's lyrics, and but to find a way to be the bridge to that piece of land. They have to trust the bridge. They have to trust to walk over the sea to the other place of land with peace and trust and all these beautiful things. And that's why I believe we are very responsible for this evolution of people in this lifestyle of way of living. So that's why I believe, and that it becomes stronger and stronger as long as we talk about it, that we need these basic principles. And neutrality is a principle. Nobody says that we must be neutral, or if we say that, it's like we're saying that a judge should be fair, but most of we have a second and third degree of judgment, because nobody can say that a judge is God. And so we are not saints. Nobody is, and has a reason to pretend that he is a saint. So we need some principles, and they protect us also. Neutrality is a principle. It's not us that are neutral, but we have to be mediators with these principles. And impartiality and neutrality, in my opinion, we use them together, but I believe they are different and different enough. Because I believe that impartiality is not to take the part of the one participant or the other participant. It has the word impartial, participant. I think, like Greeks, words are not by luck. It is not to be with the one or the other part, but neutrality is not to have to do with the result, with the decision. It's what we said before, that if suppose that the participant is blind because of the feelings, and he can't see in a clear way, so we help him go where he wants to go. The fact that we're guiding them doesn't mean that we patronize them or decide where they shall go, and that is what I think is neutrality.
But here today, right now, Mandy, you have to, whatever Eileen said, is there something from what she said that
Yes,
you want to? Yes,
but
that is the important
yes,
part.
of
Your
course.
session is over. Your session is over. We will listen to you some other time on that. On what
That
your
is
thoughts. Today we are
the
on Eileen's thoughts and where you think what she said, what it resonated with you. But
this is a way to go with Eileen to a place where lands my question. My question, Eileen, is
yeah,
you said something very nice, that we don't have to take things personally, and that's an aspect of neutrality also, in my opinion, not to take personally the case we have in front of us. I mean, if you think that that could help us understand and realize what is this principle of neutrality and how that could help us to take a distance from the case, to impersonalize, to have impersonality, to not take personal the things, and to help the participants not to take personally the things, and to forgive.
yeah. I think
And
what I
of
need to.
course, one
Yeah, I think
question
I need
is,
to do anyway. Where's the question? First of all, only the question. This is where I don't even interactive session with Ken. I don't have only for this reason. People take 10 minutes to come to the question, and we don't have time with Ken like that. So, Bandy, I'm preparing you for that. If there's any question, we'll ask you to put it in the chat. We will never ask you to ask a question because it seems that's half a session going through that. What's the question? Let's go to that.
so okay,
Yes.
the question. Eileen, do you believe that neutrality is an identity or a principle? Question two, do you believe that not taking in personal could help us be neutral, and helping also the parties, if we are not personal, to not take things personally, and so to be able to resolve the resolution? And do you believe that forgiveness could also help the participants?
One by one, one by one.
Also,
Let's go to the first one. Let's go to the first one. We'll come to the second one later. She's not running away anywhere. What's the first question, Eileen? You got the first question?
No, the last one.
No, later we'll come back to the question. We'll come first.
First
let her handle
question.
the first
Is it
one.
a principle? Is it a principle or a characteristic, the neutrality for the mediator?
Well, I kind of what you were going on. I think it's good to have our basic principles, right? Our code of ethics on how we operate. I think that's important to embody those things. So I agree. And, you know, how you were saying to try to be impartial, that you're not taking sides, and neutrality, that you're trying to create a safe distance from, you know, maybe advising, and your job is really just to help them come to a common agreement. I think that, yeah, in principle, that's what we should try to embody and understand. But I think, do we take things personally? I don't know about you, but I am an empath. So when I hear people struggling, I absorb that energy and I process it. And I can't like cut that off. You know,
yes, but where is the limit? Where is the limit between empathy and seeing, how do we say, when we have the mirror in front of us and our traumas? Is it empathy to see
You're
our
looking
traumas?
for Mandy, it seems that you're looking for a certain answer. Why don't we ask you to answer it? Because you're not looking for her answer. You're looking for her to say what your answer is. Let her say that. Let her listen to her. She has something to say. Yes, Eileen.
I think, I mean, it's from case to case, of course. You know, some things I'm maybe a little bit more neutral, or because it doesn't, you know, I'm not familiar, but there could be something that I'm get emotionally involved with because I have my own triggers, right? That brings up maybe something that happened in my past, and then it makes my brain start thinking about this. And so, you know, I talked about reflective practice. Like there could be certain things where all of a sudden you're not neutral anymore. And you didn't even realize that. You say you're neutral, but then something happens in the process that triggers that in you, or you have your blind spot and you don't even realize that. I mean, we're all humans, you know, we've been programmed a certain way through our upbringing and through our training, and sometimes we have to unlearn these things. So, you know, what is neutrality? Am I like having a poker face and I'm showing no signs of emotion? Or if somebody says something that's shocking, you know, is my body language saying that? You know, I'm a person, I talk with my body language. So how, you know, if I'm in a situation where, you know, the other people are picking up on that, the participants, that, you know, she's reacting in a certain way, then that's who I am, right? So I have to accept that. So I think it's very hard. I you know, in teaching mediation, if you have a tendency that you're an activist, or you're really, then go be an activist, don't be a mediator, right? Go into the profession where if you're seeking justice, then you need to go do that. Then you're not a mediator. You have to understand that, okay? So, you know, when I started coaching, you know, my tendency was to give advice because I wanted to tell them how to fix it, right? And so when you go to a coach, you don't, technically, if you're abiding by neutrality and impartiality, I'm not here to tell you what to do. I'm just here to listen. And so how hard it is for us to do that. I struggled with that when I first became a coach, because I wanted to help the person. You know, I have this helping syndrome. I wanted to say those things to make them feel better. I wanted to help them. I wanted to build that trust and say, I understand. And, you know, but when I do that, am I being neutral? Right? Do I open myself up as a coach and share a personal story? Oh, this happened to me too, and this is how I dealt with it. Is that impartial? No, I'm telling them a story and how I dealt with it. So I'm giving them indirectly advice, how I coped with a similar situation, right? So, but that's not coaching, right? But they might at the end say, you were the best coach ever, and you really helped me because you were so personal and you made yourself vulnerable and you opened yourself up. Now, all of a sudden, I'm not neutral, okay? So, I don't know, it's a slippery, you know, dance. I think, you know, when we're good and we want to build trust, sometimes building trust is identifying with the other person and sharing with them.
I think you should have a look at the sessions to be had today. But these things came up. Herman also had spoke about this aspect. But finally, it's about you coming as a person. Now, that's what they want. He said that, look, at one point of time, I tried to take my practice in the manner where the way people talk about it, the neutrality and all that. And it wasn't really appreciated as much as when I came in as a person. And it's me coming in, kind of thing. So, Mandy, question number 2. Question number 2.
Parenthesis.
Number 2.
Symposiums are very nice because in symposiums we drink, and when you drink, you are not neutral. We can practice on neutrality because when you drink, you see things, you know, without perceptions. Number 2 is
when you drink, your true personality comes out, right?
Maybe, yeah, maybe.
You know,
maybe, but people who drink are fun. They have fun. They have
right. But you let down your guard, and letting down your guard, it could be that neutrality.
There won't be participants in the symposium. It will be only mediators.
Well, yeah, that's. But no, I like kind of what you said about the bridge. You know, I think that's a beautiful symbol for our field, right? We're trying to build bridges, and yeah, bridges do get knocked down, right? So it's always like this Harvard, build a bridge, always a bridge that's open, right? So it could be the process doesn't come to resolution, but there's still a bridge. So down the road, there's an opportunity.
Yes, and the bridge gives you the freedom, and that's what neutrality to me is, where to go. where you can go in one side of the bridge or the other side of the one land or the other. And that's what neutrality is, not to not have empathy, but to not involve to the decision the parties are going to make. And what I wanted to ask, number two, can we say you believe it would be helpful if we have trust, but we feel that we can't be neutral to stop a mediation, to say I can't.
I think.
Is it something that has ever happened to you, that to realize that you can't distance yourself from the case and the parties?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't been really a practicing mediator, but more of a coach. But I think to give some advice here, maybe in those situations, it's good to have a co-mediator. Like if you go in and you know.
This was question number 3. Do you believe a co-mediator?
Yes.
Yes.
Particularly even in the online dispute, if you do co-mediation, you might be able to say, okay, now my co-mediator is going to take over and help you, and I can take a step back. And then those are the opportunities, you don't have to give up the case completely, but and then maybe at the end with a fellow mediator that you are both bringing that wisdom in and trying to guide the process in a better way.
To bring
right.
the balance. That's so what I believe is very helpful.
I think so too. So if you are getting into a case, you see this might be difficult for me alone, then seek the help of another mediator or bring somebody in. And I think that might be a beautiful way to still do good work and give the best solution to the end user.
Very good.
So Mandy, questions done? So not bad, Mandy. Eileen has been able to answer all questions. That's a big achievement.
I have one more question.
Oh God,
will you come to Zakynthos? Will you come to Zakynthos?
She's the chairman of the Zakynthos Tourism Board. You know that. This is what she does. The mediation part of it is just a secondary thing. Basically, she just promotes Zakynthos and tourism to Zakynthos.
Hey, I told you, I think I'm Athena.
I'm a tour operator.
I'm Athena that's been born into the modern century here. So
basically, Mandy's concept.
Athena would like to return to Greece, please.
Please come.
Mandy's concept is that she wants to develop in Zakynthos a holistic conflict resolution space, where people will come, they will be healed in various ways, in the body, in the mind, in the conflict, in relationships, in every kind of healing will happen in that space. What is it going to be called, Mandy? What is that space going to be called? That a Greek word we need.
Yes, it is Mediterranean.
Mediterranean. What? What is that?
Mediterranean.
That's a tongue twister.
Yeah, exactly.
It is the Mediterranean Sea is mediation and is a new nation.
Oh, right. That's a lot of things. But the only thing is, Mandy is going to be difficult to pronounce. Mediterranean. What is it going to be?
Mediterranean.
Narration. Oh boy.
It's going to be a
I
tough
gotta
one.
see it spelled out so I can pronounce it
Yes,
correctly.
I think we need to write it down.
Medination.
Okay, that's better. That's easier. Meditation is much easier. So we will take care of meditation, mediation, and the Mediterranean Sea, and a lot of other things, right?
Wow. Oh boy. Can we just live there in a happy colony all together and just
that's the whole idea. That's what look, Mandy has very good thoughts on this, and I keep putting
up.
We're
ready. She's getting us ready for retirement, where all the misfits of the world, which is us, because we're the change, the change makers or the change agents, right? That have to go against the grain. So yeah, we can have a place where we all come.
That's why I put up the picture. I put up the Zakynthos only for that reason.
The next project
I have to do this.
To have.
I have to put this up.
The project is to have a Medi rest home. Retirement.
There we
For
go.
meditation.
Retirement-iation.
Hey, this is creative ideas on how to,
Yeah.
Why not? And we'll
I-
be the wise men and women sitting there having symposiums, living all together, old men and women.
And then, of course, we'll have no conflicts, right? Not one whatsoever.
I think we'll have lots of work. There'll be lots to handle.
I know. We'll be like, we need conflict resolution practitioner in this community, please.
No, good thoughts. Good thoughts. She really has good thoughts. She's really, whatever she's saying, she actually believes in that nice ideal world that she wants to
my
create,
God.
and it'll happen. It's going to happen, Mandy. Don't worry about it. Like I keep
I love
saying, that we have to create that bubble. People might say whatever, but that bubble can be an idealistic bubble that you create with the people whom you want to create it with. That's your world. Your world doesn't have to have all the 8 billion people on the planet. You just create that little world, and it just goes on and keep. That's what the idea of that World Mediation Circle is. This just get that world and keep creating a larger circle as we go along, but be very selective. I'm very selective as the people I bring in, because there are lots of factors. You're, like I keep saying, you're the ambassadors of mediation and everything in relation to how people perceive a mediator. It should be, they don't have a face for a mediator. Look, some parts of the world they might, some people that don't. So that symposium of mine, that mediation in our culture and traditions, that actually the theme was this. Let me put up the theme there, that people are not familiar with the word, but they're familiar with the process. So let's connect them with the process rather than hang on to a word. So this is, of course, Eileen, the Woodstock of mediation, as it was termed by Raphael. And he made this poster on the original poster of Woodstock. So it was very nice. It was 97 speakers from 45 countries.
Wow.
It was interesting.
So I just have to listen to all your YouTube channels, and I could have saved like going to a PhD program.
Exactly. That's what I keep saying. There is so much content. Use it. Please use it.
Oh my God. Yeah.
Well, I tell you, right? It comes for free. That's why people don't understand the value of it. And all these people who have spoken, I mean, this is practical knowledge that you're getting, plus theoretical, everything together. So, so this was what the theme was. And of course, I take up the definition from the Singapore Convention. It's a very nice, simple definition. And with all these aspects of the models and everything goes out of the picture. The words go out of the picture, what you call it. A process, irrespective of the expression used or the basis upon which the process is carried out, whereby parties attempt to reach an amicable settlement of the dispute with the assistance of a third person or persons lacking the authority to impose a solution. That's the key aspect upon the parties to the dispute. So I take it from there. So basically, this was it. Mediation is defined in the convention has been part of our culture and tradition. It is part of our cultural heritage. And people around the world may not be familiar with the word mediation, but they're familiar with the process. So that is what a collaborative approach to dispute resolution being used by families and communities, including indigenous and business communities, for centuries and passed on. So that's what we have to connect them with. I think that is why I'm saying terminology and all needs to be really looked at properly, because how is the user perceiving it? I mean, that's finally, that's it. That's what it's all about. In the mediation world, all these discussions that we may have, it has no purpose served. Yes, it does. It serves purpose for people who are into that field of academics, but that's perfectly all right. But being a practicing mediator, you are not into that. You're into actually helping a user resolve a dispute. So I think the focus from the user has gone away from the user. So now I'm wanting to put it to the user. What do you understand? What are the simple words that we can use to take you through the process, for you to understand the process? Just do that. And whichever language, I mean, in Greek, there'll be another way to talk about it, and they'll connect to a different word. And Mandy was talking about it today. I don't know, today or yesterday, about the words, different words. What is conflict? Yesterday, I think, Mandy, we were having a discussion. Yeah. Conflict. What is the word for conflict? What is the word for dispute? So how do people connect to that word is also important. So that's going to be this. There's a well, let's see. It's going to be called a symposium. What is going to be called on language and mediation coming up next year. So we'll discuss all these things there. So
well, wonderful. Well, this was certainly fun, and I really enjoyed. It's like having a little playground for mediators, right? So we've got to play and share, but I think, like you said, it's the collective wisdom of all of us that ties us together. We're all, talking the same language, even though it's terminology, but we all, I think, are driven by the same purpose. And I think that's a wonderful thing.
And let me say, you said playground. There is, you're in Florida. Constantia, she's in Brazil. She calls what I do the Disneyland of mediation.
But yeah, my applaud. I'm going to try to, spread the word. And I think that's, a real challenge in our field. How do we brand and help make this a norm, right? Like conflict resolution is a skill that people are learning. That it's like typing, right? I need to know how to do conflict resolution, right? So, yeah.
And I've been saying that the skill is already there. We just have to bring those people out, and which is what I am going to be doing. And part of that World Mediation Circle is this. The skill is there. Let's bring that out. Further skill development has to happen. Let it go there. There are lots of things happening on that area. There's content here on my channel. People have all kinds of courses and everything that they do. But if the right people come into it, that's where things take off. It's not that you can just say that I'll put the skill, which is you'll hear this. Eileen, why I'm telling you all this is because maybe you haven't heard all my sessions, and this is something you'll hear a lot of times is mediators are not made in 40-hour factories. That's it. Go out a lot of times. Some people, I'm sure, get offended by what I say, but I was reading somewhere, revolutions do not happen by being polite. so that's something which you have to be clear that. So that's the way I look at it. That you're not going to make them. Evolution of a Mediator, the series is all about that. About the fact that whatever you go through, whatever Mandy has gone through in her life and her value systems and upbringing makes her who she is. I can't put her through a 40-hour thing and say, oh, now I've churned out a mediator. I think we're demeaning mediators, we're disrespecting mediators and mediation in general when we say that. So Eileen, thank you very much.
Okay, well, thank you, and all the
Thank you.
best to you. And yeah, we'll keep in touch, and I look forward to the future shows and to help you, if you need speakers, as I said, and just kind of reach out and help the movement. So yeah, and Mandy, thank you so much, and I love your ideas as well. And
please attend
attend
the last session.
She's a Greek philosopher. You can see that in her wisdom. So
but the only thing is, in terms of philosophy, we have to put the Socrates thing into her, that she knows nothing kind of thing, because she's looking for answers that she wants to match with her answers. Which is what we have to move her away from. That's the only thing that is. So, but otherwise,
maybe that's called confirmation bias.
Yeah, exactly. That's the thing.
A response that confirms what you believe, right? So
which is what we have to move her away from. That's what we have to move her away from. Listen.
We all have confirmation bias, right? We only seek out those that we, you know what I mean? So getting in a room full of mediators, maybe not a good thing for us, right? I mean, we need to get in the room with those people that are like, ambivalent or suspicious of this, and hear, like you said, what the end user, what does the end user need? Are we really surveying them? Are we really listening to their demands? And so, yeah, it's like doing the marketing research on mediation, right?
Exactly. I do my test marketing. I actually do my test marketing in every aspect. This World Mediation Circle concept came up after doing my test marketing in various aspects, in schools, communities, organizations. I've done that, but I can't do everything. So that's why the idea is, let's all work together to spread that and create the circles and take it forward. But Ken Cloke session on Friday, please attend that. That's, of course, the session is at 10:30, but we'll start our discussion half an hour before, just to, in terms of learnings and key takeaways kind of thing, which I do after the end of every symposium. Just a short session, whatever. I earlier used to keep it for 1 hour, but I said that when you have that 1 hour and then you have Ken also, so that it gets a little long. So just a half an hour thing, and just meet up and just say hi to each other. Yeah.
Okay, I'll try to log in. I know I have something at 10, but as soon as I get off of that, then I'll try to get
it's 10:30, 10 o'clock India time, which will be.
Oh, so 10 o'clock.
That's 1.5 hours. That means about 11:30. I think about 11:30 your time. I think
11:30 Eastern
Eastern
Standard
time.
Time.
Yeah.
Okay.
Eastern time.
I know you're like 10 hours ahead. Oh my God.
Yeah.
Oh boy, you're ready to go to bed.
Exactly. But
Okay,
imagine,
I'll let you go to sleep now.
yes, you.
Hypnotherapy, the best hypnotherapy.
He needs to go to bed so he can be ready for tomorrow. So
Exactly. Those all
All
you don't
right.
understand. The social media posts and everything has to still have to happen. So thank you very
Okay.
much, Eileen. Thank you, Mandy, for
Can
always
I
being
say
there and asking.
bye?
Say bye. Yes.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Goodbye.
Bye.